Welcome to Pursuing Justice. It's good to have you with us. Our guests today are Jeff and Becky Miller, and they are the parents of Seth Miller, who is the executive director of the Innocence Project of Florida. If you've been following our podcast, the last set of podcasts, I interviewed Seth along with Dean McKee, who is one of our exonerees. But today, as I said in another podcast, our theme is philanthropy and giving back to our community. And so I decided to invite Jeff and Becky on the show to talk about philanthropy from their perspective and their connection, of course, to the Innocence Project of Florida. So welcome to you both.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. So given our theme is philanthropy today, if you would tell our listeners about your connection to the Innocence Project of Florida.
Well, it's really a very, very interesting connection. As you know, our son is the executive director of the project. And so we are extremely involved because we support him and we support the project. But we have another connection. Our daughter did an internship there when she was in law school. So we are vitally connected to the project.
Right.
What you may not know is that she also sits on the board of the newly formed Innocence Project of Delaware.
Oh, that's so interesting. How old is that project in Delaware?
Very new.
It's very new. They're in the process now of hiring an executive director.
Oh,
so it is brand new.
They don't even have an executive director yet.
No.
Wow.
Actually, she is doing the hiring. She is interviewing now. And she's the one who is tasked with hiring the executive director.
What a great job. That's very exciting. And Delaware is one of our smallest states. So this project is just going to be Delaware, no other state, correct?
No.
Exactly.
No, because the surrounding states all have
their own project.
Oh, I see. All right.
Pennsylvania has two different projects.
Yeah, and Julie was very lucky because, our daughter Julie, because she tried to get 2 federal grants, and her brother Seth said it would be very difficult, and she actually got both grants.
Very good grant writer.
So they have a good start.
Yes, they have an excellent start.
Yeah, getting a grant I think it's a special skill to be able to get a grant. Yeah, that's
wonderful. That's what she does.
That's what she does.
For the state of Delaware. She writes grants.
Yeah,
and she's a planner. So she does very good work.
All right. And how influential would you say you were when it came to Seth's decision to, well, I guess even before he became part of the Innocence Project of Florida, to pursue the law as his career?
He always wanted to do that. That was something, even as a small child, that he really wanted to do.
He always talked about being an attorney.
Yes.
I'm not going to say the Innocence Project was what he thought of as a child, but going to Florida State University and the connections he made there, he really fell in love with working at the project.
He actually, as a student, he wrote the first brief in Florida that got the first person out of prison.
I don't think I knew that.
Yes.
Do you remember who that was?
I'm trying to remember the name. I can't recall right now. Seth would certainly remember.
Yeah,
but it was very exciting for him, and he was bitten. He was passionate about it, and they actually remembered him and offered him a position.
Yeah, well, he had left
later. He left
after graduation, and after his wife graduated from law school, they moved to Washington D.C. and they had positions there. And then he
worked for the American Bar Association and you may find this interesting. I don't know if you know this. He worked for the
on the death penalty moratorium
project.
Oh my God!
He helped write it.
Yeah, but when they contacted him, he
come back.
He knew that was his dream job.
He knew that was his dream job, and he came back.
He got it. Now, what was your philosophy? I mentioned in the podcast last week that I believe that children grow up wanting to give back to their communities or volunteer in some way because that's what they have learned as children, because they see it. Either they see it with parents or a parent volunteers with a child together and shows them what is possible. So could you tell us your philosophy in raising, you have 3 children, raising your children regarding giving back to their community?
I agree completely. First of all, I think it begins with activism. And I believe that children have to be taught how to give back. We did this very, very early. Seth went to his first march, actually, when he was 5 years old. And he went to an international march in Washington at 5 years old and held Teddy Kennedy's hand.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was very special. He never forgot that.
And this march was to free Soviet Jewry.
Yes.
And
there were millions of people there. And it was very exciting for him. He was 5 years old. He never forgot that. It was very, very special. But more importantly, every single weekend, we volunteered. From the time the kids were about 2, we volunteered at nursing homes. And we gave back.
What did you do at the nursing?
Well, we did services.
Oh, yeah, Sabbath services?
We volunteered doing services that the kids would do. They would give out the books. They would help with meals. We did this every Saturday afternoon.
Mm-hmm. And besides that, we always volunteered at Christmas, working at food banks and places like that. So the kids knew from a very young age this was very important. You had to give back to society.
Absolutely. It was extremely important to do that. It's
and the fact that you did it with them.
Very important.
All the difference. You didn't send them; you went with them.
No,
it was a family.
No, and they watched us. They watched us do this, and we were volunteers. I mean, not only did we volunteer at a congregation, but I volunteered, and they watched us volunteer, and they watched their grandparents volunteer.
Yeah, and actually, my father in retirement received the Volunteer of the Year award from the state of Florida.
For the entire state.
So they knew that he went into the schools and he helped underprivileged kids to help them read. He did a lot of different things. So they really saw that.
It was something that was ingrained. It was something that was important. You know, this is something that I taught in the schools. I started a program for the state of Pennsylvania that won a national award. And every student in the state of Pennsylvania had to volunteer or they didn't graduate.
That's great. I didn't mention what you're both retired now. But Becky, what did you do? What was your line of work?
I taught. I taught high school English, and I taught graduate classes as well. I taught graduate writing classes.
And Jeff?
So
Uh, I am an accountant. I'm retired, but I still try to get involved. And actually, I'm in the process of contacting the United Way of Suncoast because I would like to help lower income people with preparing their income tax returns.
Oh, that's terrific.
So we're still working.
You're
and we're still volunteering.
Still volunteering, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, where you gave that philosophy to your children, but where did that philosophy come from when you were very, very young?
Well, it wasn't difficult. My parents were Holocaust survivors, and I was born in displaced persons camp in Germany. I remember what it was like to be cold and hungry.
Mm-hmm.
So I was raised with a real sense of giving back. We were very happy to be in America. And so I was taught that you had a sense of gratitude and you gave back. And I tried to instill that, as did Jeff, in our children.
Absolutely. And as I said, my father and mother did a lot of volunteering in different organizations, and they knew that was important and raised us the same way as we're raising our children.
Right. And that's what I'm saying, that I think it is taught by example. That doesn't mean, though, that you can't learn this kind of lesson if no one placed it in your life, or no one was a good example. I still think it can be taught. And you mentioned
absolutely can be taught.
Oh, I think so. You mentioned the idea that you started a program where the kids in Pennsylvania were required to do some volunteer work. And I think maybe sometimes kids resent that they have to do it. But I think that if you don't expose them to it, then, and if no one else has either, then there's a missed opportunity there. So that's.
But Harriet, not if they have ownership. Not if they decide what they want to do.
That's true. Did the kids in Pennsylvania make their own decisions as to what kind of volunteer work? Oh, I see.
Yes.
I see. And what were some of the things?
Total ownership. And that's the key.
Yeah, I agree.
They make the decisions. They have ownership. They are invested.
Right. Instead of being told. What were some of the volunteer jobs or the volunteer work they got involved with, the students that you mentioned?
I had a student who volunteered at a at Lehigh University at a primate lab. That's very important. And what she did was she actually developed an entire lab for primates. That was incredible.
What was the goal?
Scholarship.
Yeah. What actually was she trying to do?
That. Excuse me?
What was she trying to do with the primate
She was
lab?
trying to develop a whole set of labs and ways that primates could relate to humans.
Oh.
Wow. This is a high school student.
And in another case, we can talk about our other son that we haven't mentioned.
That's right.
When he was 15 years old in high school, what he did, he actually volunteered to go to Bulgaria when the Iron Curtain came down.
Oh.
And he went there.
He was one of the first people into Bulgaria.
That's right.
15 years old.
And he went there, and it really was, Bulgaria still had...
They were still fighting.
A group of elderly Jewish women and men who have not had an opportunity to practice their religion in many, many years. And Sean, along with a few other people,
there were 7 of them.
7 went